September 24th, 2021, proved to be a fateful day for the Marcano family. On this day, their beloved daughter was supposed to arrive for a visit, but instead, she disappeared without a trace. Mia Marcanu, born on April 26, 2002, into a happy and loving family, was always close to her loved ones. Her father, Marlon Marcano, her mother, Emma Scarabrail, and her older brother, Marlon Jr. She was a cheerful, bright, open, kind, and attractive girl who loved to travel, enjoyed dancing, cheerleading, horseback riding, and even worked as a model. Mia led an active lifestyle, indulging in all her passions, and even triumphed in beauty pageants and cheerleading competitions. Her Caribbean roots and culture were a constant source of pride for her, and she regularly participated in carnivals. At the time of her disappearance, Mia, a 19-year-old girl, was living in the tourist city of Orlando, Florida. She graduated from high school in 2020 and enrolled at Valencia College to study sports medicine, as she aspired to help others. On the morning of September 24th, 2021, she was working at a rental office, and after her workday, she was supposed to board a flight to visit her parents in Fort Lauderdale. The flight lasts about an hour. Throughout the day, the girl stayed in touch, but around 5 p.m., she suddenly stopped responding to calls and messages from her relatives, which was a shock to them. This was completely uncharacteristic of her, ignoring calls and messages. Usually, her phone was always nearby and charged. The family became even more concerned when they learned that Mia hadn't flown in and hadn't even checked in for her flight. They realized something bad had happened to their daughter. Around 9 p.m., Mia's mother called the police to report her daughter missing. Law enforcement officers headed to the luxury residential complex, Orden Villas, where Mia lived and worked. However, the door to her apartment was locked. The police went outside and looked through the window, but no one was visible inside. The apartment appeared neat, with nothing suspicious except for the fact that a window was open. The family called Mia's aunt, who also lived in Orlando, and asked her to check on their daughter. Meanwhile, the parents, overwhelmed with anxiety, also arrived in Orlando around 3 a.m. When they entered the apartment, they saw a mess. The bed wasn't made, and Mia's favorite teddy bear, which always accompanied her, lay on the floor in the bathroom. A dresser, pushed out of place, blocked the entrance to the apartment. On the floor, they found a foreign utility knife, scattered jewelry, and a small bloodstain on the pillow. This was all completely unusual for their daughter, who always kept things in order and couldn't leave the house without making her bed. It was also unclear how she could have exited the apartment if the dresser was blocking the way. The blood on the pillow struck particular fear in the parents. It was strange that the window was open, as they had recently installed new locks for security, and Mia always checked to make sure the windows were closed. It seemed that an intruder had been in the apartment, attacked the girl, and possibly dragged her out through the window. Outside, the parents encountered a worker named Armando Caballero, who was inquiring about the search for the girl. It turned out that Mia's aunt, who had arrived earlier to check on her, had also met Armando. He appeared to be concerned and asked her if she was looking for Mia. The aunt was surprised as no one, besides the family and the police, knew about the girl's disappearance yet. This Armando later approached the police on the evening of Mia's disappearance and reported that he had heard about it. The parents were aware that Armando was stalking their daughter, sending her numerous messages professing his feelings. They even recorded him on video while he was speaking with a police officer. The true purpose of the conversation was to uncover the truth, as they were convinced of his involvement in their daughter's disappearance. Armando claimed that Mia might be at her friend Tati's place, but the parents and close friends of the girl dismissed this version since they did not know any Tati. After that, Armando got into his car and drove away. A neighbor from the residential complex informed the police that Mia had repeatedly complained to her about this worker who was stalking her. The girl's friends confirmed that Armando had sent her numerous messages declaring his love, to which Mia did not reciprocate. His obsessive behavior frightened her. It seemed he was obsessed with her. Investigators decided to start their inquiry by examining the background of 27-year-old Armando Caballero. Armando worked as a maintenance worker in the upscale residential complex Arden Villas, where Mia lived and was involved in repair work. There were no records of his criminal history, nor any complaints from girls regarding stalking or harassment. The police summoned him for questioning, during which he claimed to be in love with Mia and to have regularly sent her messages. However, according to him, the girl had rejected him, after which he decided to back off. When the investigators asked about his actions on the day of her disappearance, Armando insisted that he had been working late into the evening. He also stated that he last saw Mia around 3 p.m. in the complex's office when he passed by, expressing that he was very worried about her disappearance. However, the police had no evidence to arrest him. As Armando got into his car, Mia's parents noticed that a keychain fell out of his pocket. He quickly picked it up and drove away. Arden Villas had a security system that recorded information about door openings. The staff had universal keys that allowed them to unlock all doors. Mia's parents thought to find out whether any staff member had opened the door to their daughter's apartment. However, the administration refused to provide this information, citing privacy violations. Mia's disappearance led to a loud investigation. A few days later, the police decided to obtain a court order to review the surveillance footage covering the residential complex area. The recordings confirmed that Mia left her home around 4:30 p.m. in a black Ford Fiesta owned by Armando. This news shocked her parents, as it provided the investigation with new information. Later, Armando was called in for questioning again. Initially, he denied being in Mia's apartment, but later confessed that he had given her his keys so she could take the car. When asked if he had picked her up afterward, Armando replied that he didn't know what happened to the girl. The police began meticulously analyzing all video recordings in the area, discovering that cameras near her apartment had captured Armando getting into his car and driving away in an unknown direction. This raised suspicions among the investigators, and they started searching for additional information about his whereabouts. Mia's parents and friends actively took action, organizing search efforts, distributing flyers with her photographs, and asking people if they had seen her. This story gained widespread attention in the media, leading to an increase in the number of people who learned about the girl's disappearance. At the same time, investigators were trying to determine if there were any circumstances in Mia's life that could have led to her disappearance. Of course, news of Mia Marcanu's disappearance quickly spread on social media, where friends and acquaintances expressed their support. However, the atmosphere of tension grew, and many people began to suspect Armando. Ultimately, a week after her disappearance, the police named Armando as a suspect in the kidnapping, as it became clear that he had both the opportunity and the motive. Investigators obtained a search warrant for his residence, hoping to uncover evidence that could confirm their suspicions. During the search of Armando's apartment, several items were found that alarmed the investigators. Old belongings belonging to the missing Mia, as well as some personal items that could indicate his suspicious behavior. In particular, among her belongings in a backpack, investigators discovered several documents and photographs of her at various events. In conversations with the police, Armando again denied any involvement in Mia's disappearance, claiming that he simply had not returned her things. However, investigators noted his unstable behavior, which only fueled their suspicions. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Armando might be suffering from a personality disorder, which could explain his obsessive need for communication with Mia. Friends and family of the girl began to testify about his stalking, recounting how he sent numerous messages that grew increasingly aggressive over time. The investigation was gaining momentum. It turned out that Armando Caballero had previous conflicts with other girls who had complained about his harassment. The police decided to summon him for a new round of questioning, believing they had sufficient grounds for an arrest. During the last interrogation, under pressure from the investigators, Armando began to show noticeable signs of nervousness. When asked about Mia, he suddenly became angry, shouting that he was innocent and knew nothing about her whereabouts. This only heightened the detective's suspicions, and they made the decision to arrest him. After his arrest, Armando became more subdued. He began to talk about Mia, insisting that he had never harmed her and only wished for her to be with him. These statements were recorded and included in the case materials. Over the next few days at the police station, he unexpectedly confessed that he knew what happened to Mia but refused to disclose details. This prompted investigators to press him for more information. The situation escalated. Mia's parents, who continued to hope that their daughter was alive, learned about Armando's arrest. They organized a public event, calling on anyone who had any information about her disappearance to contact the police. The day after the arrest, detectives decided to review Armando's statements once more and gather all available information. They went to the apartment complex where Mia lived to re-examine the surveillance footage and conduct additional witness interviews. The investigation was entering a new phase. The police received more testimonies about Armando's behavior from neighbors and acquaintances. It turned out that not only Mia had suffered from his persistent harassment, other girls living in the complex had also complained about his inappropriate behavior. In light of the new testimonies, the police reached out to psychiatric experts to assess whether Armando posed a threat to others. Among those who gained access to the case was a psychologist specializing in the behavior of individuals with similar disorders. She noted that Armando might act impulsively, especially in situations of rejection. Throughout the lengthy investigation, Mia's parents did not lose hope. They organized a campaign to support the search for their daughter, inviting everyone to join in. Friends and volunteers came together to spread information about the disappearance, which once again attracted media attention. However, as the days passed with no progress, tension mounted, and the parents decided to hire private detectives, hoping for new clues that might have escaped the police's notice. The detectives began exploring social media and all of Mia's potential contacts, trying to determine whom she had been communicating with before her disappearance. It turned out that Mia had been actively in touch with certain individuals who could be potential witnesses. This prompted the family to seek them out and find out if they had seen Mia or could provide any information about her last days. One of the detectives came across an old acquaintance of Mia's who mentioned that the girl had shared her fears about Armando, describing situations in which he had stalked her. This information became an important element in the investigation. Investigators also contacted Armando's psychologist to learn about his past and potential reasons for his behavior. This helped to better understand his personality and identify other potential victims. Over several weeks of gathering testimony, new facts began to surface. Mia's parents launched another social media campaign, drawing attention to the case and urging anyone with any information about the disappearance to come forward. Over time, new testimonies began to support Mia's parents' suspicions about Armando. The girl's friends recalled instances when she had received threats from him, as well as his attempts to get close to her even when she was with friends. Information about his previous harassment only heightened the family's anxiety. As the investigation progressed, detectives decided to question Armando again, trying to determine whether he was aware of Mia's connections with other people and whether a conflict could have arisen that led to her disappearance. Armando, for his part, continued to insist on his innocence, claiming that he was only trying to help Mia. At this time, the psychologist working with the police began a thorough analysis of Armando's behavior. She noted that his actions displayed signs of control and jealousy, which could potentially lead to aggressive reactions if his feelings went unanswered. This information further heightened the investigators' concerns. In search of new evidence, law enforcement decided to investigate Armando's social media accounts, hoping to uncover traces of his communication with other possible victims. It turned out that he had been actively in contact with several girls who had previously complained about his aggressive behavior. The police deemed it necessary to reach out to them for additional information regarding Armando's past actions. One day, a woman approached the investigators, claiming she too had been a victim of Armando's stalking. She shared that after rejecting his invitation for a date, he began sending her threats through social media. This testimony added crucial details to the case and provided the investigators with further grounds for an arrest. The case of Mia's disappearance was being actively covered in the media. The parents, addressing the public, spoke about their daughter, her dreams, and hopes. They created new posters featuring her photograph and placed them around the city, hoping that someone might provide useful information. Under pressure from public opinion and based on new evidence, the police decided to re-interrogate Armando. This time, the investigators were prepared to ask him about specific moments of contact with Mia. Noticing the detective's confidence, Armando began to get nervous. He tried to avoid direct answers, but the police had already prepared questions that compelled him to speak more candidly. During the interrogation, the investigators established that on the day of Mia's disappearance, Armando had indeed been in her apartment. This turned out to be a key piece of evidence in the case. When the detectives questioned him about this, he initially tried to deny his presence, but under the pressure of the evidence, he admitted that he had visited her, insisting that he came only to talk. These statements became important for the further development of the investigation. The police obtained a search warrant for Armando's apartment, hoping to find additional evidence that would confirm his involvement in Mia's disappearance. After receiving the warrant, the investigators went to Armando's apartment with the aim of finding any evidence that could confirm his participation in the case. The operation was conducted under close scrutiny, as the situation had already attracted significant media and public attention. During the search of Armando's apartment, several items that raised suspicion were found. Personal belongings of Mia's, such as a makeup bag and a brooch that had gone missing from her apartment. This fact confirmed that Armando had indeed visited Mia on the day of her disappearance. In addition, numerous messages were discovered on his computer in which he expressed his feelings for the girl, along with threats in case of refusal. These findings provided the police with sufficient grounds to arrest Armando. He was taken into custody and brought to the police station for further questioning. During the interrogation, Armando continued to insist on his innocence, claiming that he had nothing to do with Mia's disappearance. However, under the pressure of the evidence, his statements became increasingly less convincing. After several days of intensive investigation, the detectives reviewed all surveillance footage again. They noticed that on the day of Mia's disappearance, many suspicious vehicles had been recorded in the area of her apartment, which provided new leads for the investigation. The police also reached out to Mia's and Armando's neighbors to find out if they had seen anything suspicious on that day. One of Mia's neighbors mentioned hearing strange sounds resembling a fight coming from the girl's apartment. This testimony became an important element in the case. Meanwhile, Mia's parents continued their search. They organized a new campaign to draw attention to the case and called on anyone with any information to contact the police. Friends, relatives, and even strangers supported them during this difficult time. The campaign attracted the attention of local news, and several channels decided to report on Mia's disappearance, allowing the circle of people who might possess useful information to expand. However, despite all efforts, Mia still had not been found. A few days after Armando's arrest, the police received an anonymous phone call reporting a possible location for Mia. According to the information provided by the caller, Mia had been seen in a forest near the city. The police immediately set out for the specified address. They began a large-scale search operation in that area, checking every corner of the forest. Unfortunately, this attempt yielded no results, and the police returned to gathering evidence in the case against Armando. Eventually, investigators decided to involve forensic specialists for a detailed analysis of all items related to Mia, including her personal belongings. This could reveal new data about her last days and potential connections with other individuals. As the police continued their investigation, Mia's parents hoped that new evidence could shed light on the mysterious situation. However, with each passing day, the challenges grew greater, and their hopes, unfortunately, diminished. The investigation did not stand still, and each day the detectives became more aware that the case of Mia Marcanu's disappearance was not just a missing person case, but a genuine tragedy. While the family and friends of the girl suffered from uncertainty, the police focused on collecting all possible evidence and testimonies. During one of Armando's interrogations, the investigators noticed that he began to exhibit clear signs of nervousness when the topic of his past relationships came up. As a result of the investigation, the detectives learned that Armando had previously stalked another girl, who had also reported his behavior to law enforcement. This became another alarming signal for the investigation. Meanwhile, Mia's family decided to initiate their own investigation, feeling that the police were not actively enough pursuing the search. They developed a plan to involve volunteers in searching local forests and bodies of water. Many people responded to their call, uniting for a common goal: to find Mia. One morning, while the volunteer team was searching in the forest, one of the participants discovered a bag that resembled the one belonging to Mia. Inside were documents and personal items that confirmed it was indeed her bag. This discovery was yet another blow to the family, but simultaneously an important step in the investigation. The police were immediately notified about this find, and the investigators returned to the scene. Meanwhile, news about Mia's case began to be actively discussed in the media, provoking a rise in public engagement. People talked about the situation on social media, calling for action and demanding justice. This reinvigorated Mia's parents, who felt that their fight had not gone unnoticed. The day after the bag was discovered, the police received an anonymous call reporting a possible location for Mia in the Orlando area. Investigators set out for the specified place, hoping for new testimonies, but the results once again proved disappointing. Forensic examination revealed that Mia's personal belongings showed no signs of violence, but the question of why the bag was found so far from her apartment remained open. Who could have left it there? Investigators continued to search for connections between Armando and Mia's disappearance. They checked all the places where he could have been on the day of her disappearance, trying to confirm his alibi. Eventually, they found a witness who claimed to have seen Armando in the forest near the location where Mia's bag was discovered. This witness indicated that Armando appeared nervous and was trying to hide something. The police immediately called him in for questioning, where it became evident that Armando could not clearly explain where he had been that day. As a result of all these developments, the investigators decided to review the surveillance footage in the area once again. They discovered that on the night of Mia's disappearance, Armando had been active in one of the nearby parks. This gave them new evidence for an arrest, but even after all these efforts, the investigation was not progressing. The situation remained tense. Mia's parents continued to hope that their daughter was still alive and would return home. Their desire for justice only intensified. Meanwhile, the investigation began to wind down, and the public started to question the effectiveness of the inquiry. This complicated the family's situation, as they realized that with each passing day, they were getting closer to a horrific conclusion. Despite the investigation not yielding quick results, Mia's family continued their fight. They launched a social media campaign to draw attention to the case and urge people not to forget about Mia. Each day, they posted new photos, reminding everyone of her happy life and the dreams that, unfortunately, had been cut short. Thanks to this campaign, new witnesses came forward who could provide additional information. One of them claimed to have seen Mia with Armando at a cafe near her home a few days before her disappearance. This information became critically important as it indicated there had been contact between them. The police decided to check the surveillance footage from that cafe, hoping to find more evidence. Meanwhile, experts continued to analyze samples from the crime scene. After several weeks of intense work, they discovered DNA traces that likely belonged to Armando. This became a new impetus for the investigation, and the police called him in for questioning once again. During the interrogation, Armando tried to avoid revealing the truth, insisting that he had no connection to Mia. However, under the pressure of the new evidence, his testimony began to raise doubts. Detectives questioned him about where he had been on the night of the girl's disappearance, and eventually, he admitted that he had been in a park nearby. This admission gave investigators additional grounds to intensify the inquiry. They returned to that park to begin a new phase of searching. Search teams meticulously combed every inch of the area, hoping to find any signs that could lead to Mia. At the same time, the family continued to actively engage with the media, organizing press conferences and involving community activists in their cause. They did not give up and fought for justice. This generated significant public resonance, with many people expressing support and questioning why the investigation was not being conducted with greater urgency. When the public learned about the results of the DNA analysis found in Mia's personal belongings, demands for action became even louder. The case received renewed publicity, attracting the attention of local news channels, which prompted the police to intensify their efforts. They obtained a new search warrant for Armando's apartment. During the search, the police discovered several items that could be related to the case. Among the items found were Mia's personal belongings, as well as objects that raised suspicions. Immediately afterward, Armando was taken into custody. Mia's family received a renewed spark of hope, although they felt that none of these events could bring their daughter back. During the trial, Armando tried to deny his guilt. However, all the evidence against him was extremely convincing. The investigation presented detailed testimonies, witnesses, and evidence confirming his harassment of Mia and the attack on her. The girl's family gathered in the courtroom, observing every step of the proceedings, hoping for a just resolution to the case. During closed sessions, it became clear that Armando had mental health issues, which further complicated the situation. His lawyers attempted to use this fact as an argument in his favor, but the testimonies from Mia's parents, friends, and close ones who knew her forced the court to reach a decision in favor of justice. After a lengthy trial, Armando was found guilty of crimes related to the disappearance and murder of Mia Marcanu. The court sentenced him to the maximum punishment. This decision brought some relief to the family, but they knew they could never fill the void left by their daughter. The real struggle had ended, but the family's life changed forever. They continued to honor Mia's memory by organizing events dedicated to her, aimed at preventing similar tragedies in the future. They worked on raising awareness about violence and stalking, hoping that their story would serve as a lesson for others. Mia's story became a symbol of hope and remembrance, and her name remained in the hearts of those who knew her. The family fought for justice, and although time would not bring their daughter back, they knew her memory would live on forever. This story about Mia and her family not only reflects the harsh reality of disappearances and violence, but also emphasizes the power of love and determination. It teaches us that despite all difficulties, it is important not to give up in the pursuit of justice. Mia's family showed boundless devotion in their efforts to find their daughter and draw public attention to this issue. Their example demonstrates that even in the darkest times, it is essential to hold on to hope and fight for what is right. This case also serves as a reminder of the importance of supporting one another in difficult times. The community that came together for Mia's cause proved that together, greater achievements can be made. So, if you want to learn more about detective stories that inspire and educate, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Share your thoughts on this story in the comments. Your opinion matters.